Hey folks, for my introduction this week, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, and I'm actually going to talk about how this film may have changed the course of my very life. I'm probably going to explain a lot about who I am as a person, and if that doesn't interest you in any way, and you just want to get directly to the plot, I'm actually kind of flattered that you care that much about what it is I have to say about this movie. I'm going to leave a time code here for y'all to give a click on, so give this a click. It's the year 1992. I must have been about 4 years old at the time. And my babysitter, the TV, was hard at work with old episodes of Mystery Science Theater 3000 playing on loop. And thanks to my dad having pirated most of the episodes. You see, children, there used to be this thing called a VHS tape, which would allow you to record live TV. And then later you could rewind or fast forward as you saw fit. And then it happened. Something so incredibly goofy it would cause me to laugh myself into consciousness and also cement me into this fandom for the rest of my life. And thanks to my dad, was improved very much thanks to a simple push of a button. I now present to you what is the closest recollection of my very first memory, thanks to some old pirated video footage and learning how to edit the video as, well, you've seen here. Yeah. This is what my first memory looks like.
What's this? All right, who do you work for, man? Who? Oh, that's rich. Oh, that's rich.
No, it may not be very funny to you, but to 4-year-old me, this is the Aristocrats of comedy. I don't think it's the initial dropkick itself that is so funny, but it's actually watching him slide backwards in the exact same fashion. Anybody who actually knows anything about this movie knows that it's almost irredeemable in terms of quality. It is absolutely absurd, and not just the monster fights. It's very long-winded. The logic is so far out in the boonies, you're wondering if it's learning how to take banjo lessons. But the weird thing about it is this might be the first of its kind in the Godzilla franchise where it's so bad it's good. I'd also like to say a very special thank you to Mystery Science Theater 3000. If it wasn't for these guys, I would have never been introduced to this series in the first place. Not just Godzilla either, but Gamera and the countless other kaiju movies they cover. And they also kind of gave me my sense of humor. That's right, it's their fault. And if we take this riff and kind of follow it a bit, because of this movie, I grew up as an awkward child in school. I would later go on to college and get some of the easiest A's I've ever made in my film classes because of my appreciation of these movies. Hell, I even managed to go all the way to Japan, which was a lifelong goal of mine back in 2016. And it's far and away one of the best decisions this weeb has ever made. And it all started from this movie. And it's thanks to 3 robots, a guy named Joel, who kind of put me onto this strange little path of mine. Man, life's f***ing weird, huh? Alright, let's jump into this bad boy and see Godzilla get sidelined in his own movie in... Well, we're still testing nukes. The whole reason we had the incident in 54. Dr. Yamane must be pissed. Apparently, this test is the test that goes too far, as giant fissures have begun opening up, draining local lakes and nearly killing that kid from Godzilla vs. Hedorah. The human plot this time around revolves around Goro and his kid brother, and Goro's nameless friend? You know the movie is rushed when they forget to name the main characters. According to Wikizilla, they're calling him Hiroshi, so that's what we're going to refer to him as for the rest of this. I may have missed it, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, the trio head back to Goro's place after nearly losing his kid brother, only to find out that it's been broken into by somebody who has no problem assaulting children. Hiroshi takes chase, is only stopped by The most beautiful explosion in cinema history. If it wasn't clear to you that this movie was made in 6 months, it should be now. Once everything settles down, the trio find that nothing was actually stolen. In fact, things were left behind. Some soil from 2,000 miles below the surface, and this delicious candy button. No, it's not actually candy, but come on, look at that. Tell me that isn't edible. But there's no time for that now! We need this movie's true hero, Jet Jaguar! Turns out that the burglars were actually looking for JJ, but wanted him to be completed first, so they planted a bug. This must be how you inform people that you're going to rob them in Seatopia. Sea life down there is strange. Yes, this time our threat doesn't come from above, it comes from below. From actors from what feel like an entirely different movie. Seatopia. I said that silly. Because Atlantis must be copywritten. Who knows? I kinda love how zany and glossed over and just how strange this whole situation is. Anyway, they're mad at humanity for their nuclear tests, so they're gonna go send their mighty bug god Megalon topside to wreck shop. He is, however, an out-of-towner and will need the assistance of Jet Jaguar to help guide him around? That's why these two dudes need him? Yes, this movie poses a lot of questions. We've already established that this movie is nonsense. We're just gonna rush through these stupid questions. Don't ask! Don't ask! So the robbers return, they kidnap Goro and his kid brother, and they tie up Hiroshi. The plan is they're gonna put Goro into a steel box and toss him into one of the open fissures so he can make his way to Seatopia, I think? They never really explain that. And every time they bonk their heads on the steel box that they're in, it makes a rather humorous noise that, if there was any tension to begin with, is immediately gone. The drivers of the steel box are accompanied by henchman number 2, again, never really named, to make sure that the job goes off without a hitch. Meanwhile, henchman number 1 reveals what the Seatopians are up to Hiroshi, who promptly escapes and begins a car chase that goes on for 3 minutes too long. After that car chase sequence, the truck drivers get a sense of where they're headed and they casually just murder the guy who hired them in the first place, but then proceed to do the job anyway? I have no idea. Anyway, they crap their pants when Megalon shows up, and so does Hiroshi, but they then casually jack Hiroshi's ride, and we never see them again. Putting the hero in Hiroshi, he attempts to put the steel container back on the truck, but isn't able to. Comedically enough, it's Megalon that saves our two heroes. What even is this movie anymore? After that, we have a pretty standard military versus Megalon fight, stock footage interlaced with new footage, and our bug boy getting blown up a little bit. JJ is sent to lead Megalon back on track, but is intercepted by Goro, whose plan it is to use Jet Jaguar to fetch Godzilla and bring him to Megalon. I beg you, please don't ask any questions. This fun little medallion thing he's talking into overrides the commands of henchman number 1, and without a guide, Megalon just kind of goes off and does his own thing in a very childlike regard. And it's here at the 48-minute marker into this 1 hour and 20-minute movie we get our first non-stock footage shot of Godzilla, who's just kind of like patiently waiting for his call time. JJ invites him to come and save the day with him, and he just kind of promptly agrees. It might be too late, however, as Megalon is seen destroying Tokyo with stock footage from Destroy All Monsters. I don't know if this is good or bad because we don't get any reactions from anyone as to what's going on here. Maybe this is just Megalon dreaming of doing his job? Your guess is as good as mine at this point. Hiroshi and his kid brother go off to go retake Goro's place from the henchmen, so they take his eyesight away with this remote-controlled plane, but they still get their asses kicked. However, they are able to overtake him. He later tries to take revenge, but is killed by a stray rock, and that's it. It's so unceremonious. It kind of just happens. It's at this point your drunk uncle at a toga party calls up the space cockroaches from the last movie so they can get Gigan on loan. You know, writing this, I put it together. The Seatopians call on the Space Hunter M alien cockroaches for help. Maybe it's because this is where Megalon himself comes from. He's a giant cockroach. You know, there's some connectivity there I had to make for myself. I'm clearly putting too much thought into this. Sure enough, Gigan is in fact on his way. JJ shows up to the house to meet up with his dear old dad for a bit, but much like any child, he's grown up and is beginning to go off and do his own things. These things include going off to fight Megalon. No, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. He is teeny tiny, but, yeah, he can grow now. Stop asking questions! He's just that determined. You aren't as determined as JJ is, okay? And this fight starts off just the best way possible. The fight is actually pretty well matched for the beginning portion. That is until Gigan shows up, and it becomes very one-sided. Hopping and skipping with excitement, Godzilla finally arrives to 2v1 these nerds for a bit. And it is so one-sided. It's awesome. He even takes a cue from King Kong and busts out a tree and starts to smack Megalon with it. But naturally, it's not that easy, as the villains have a few more tricks left. That trick, of course, being stock footage. I feel kind of bad for Jet here, because in the time it takes for Godzilla to beat the piss out of Megalon, he's buried up to his torso and Gigan's using him as a freaking hostage. Unfortunately, he's an idiot, and Godzilla shows up and shoots him with his atomic breath. Attempting to lift him out of the hole, Megalon sees an opportunity to burn everyone alive by creating a circle of incineration? Wait. Yeah, that's right. But because this movie is out to just murder reason, JJ gives Godzilla a lift on his back and they finish the fight proper. Gigan gets his arm broken and he's turned into target practice and flies off, and we won't see him again for another 31 years. So say goodbye to Gigan, everybody. Megalon is drop kicked into history. He has his shin shattered and his upper body smashed, but he is able to escape and go back underground. Our movie ends not with people seeing Godzilla off as per usual, but the Jet Jaguar theme song, that of course was only made for this movie, and frankly is kinda catchy. What a journey. This movie is damn near a cartoon and not actually live action at all. Nonsensical, insane, and frankly only made better by the people you're watching it with. I know I kind of ripped on this movie a little bit and I'm going off script here, but I do still genuinely enjoy it, basically for the reasons I just listed. If you haven't seen this movie, do yourself a favor, grab your friends who enjoy movies the same way that you might, and just watch this one together. Obviously, it's not exactly the safest time to be doing that, but there's got to be ways that you can watch this together. I know it's on HBO Max. Just do yourself this favor. To give you even further incentive to go off and support the other folks that do these videos, you know, with any sense of professionalism or educational value, this movie has a just rich history. Titan Goji, Big Action Bill, Up from the Depths, they all cover this movie. Everything from its questionable poster art, to the actor who played Jet Jaguar nearly getting burned alive, to where Jet Jaguar comes from, and how this franchise as a whole will forever be connected to John Belushi. Please go support these fine folks. They totally deserve it. But for now, let me do the one thing that I do and connect these monsters to D&D. So let's get them ready. Alright kids, you know what time it is. Let's make these guys from easiest to hardest to make. So, here's something I haven't done in a while. Jet Jaguar isn't a monster. He's a freaking player character. This whole movie revolves around him. He's buddy-buddy with Godzilla. This is wish fulfillment, clear as day. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, you know, he's getting smacked around a little bit. If you've never played D&D, there's a race called the Warforged, which are basically just Jet Jaguars waiting to be made. And considering his martial arts knowledge, I would suggest a monk trained in the way of the open hand. I mean, since he doesn't have missiles or anything, I don't think it would make sense for him to make him anything else. Sun Soul Monk definitely doesn't fit. Other than that, you need to have a really open-minded DM that will allow you to not only have fly available, but also enlarge reduce. So, you know, good luck with that. But yeah, this is totally a player character. If you guys roll him up, I absolutely need to see it to make my life just a little bit better. A giant cockroach that flies, burrows, has a beam horn, and shoots fireballs, and has stabby hands. As you might expect, not anything like this boy in the monster manual, so we're going to need to craft it from scratch. For the top portion of this block, I'm going to start from something called a frostworm because, well, damn, just look at that. All we need to do is add about a fly speed and about 60 feet. Sounds good. And frankly, that's all we need to mess with. These stats are awesome. Let's switch it up and make the resistance to fire damage instead, because it wouldn't make sense for a fire spitter to be vulnerable to fire damage. And we also see him survive one of his own napalm bombs. He's also a tunneler, so we're going to go ahead and give him the tunneler ability. Not to mention, we got to give him that old siege ability. It seems to heavily rely on this fireball and laser attack, so naturally we need to give him fireball. Let's call it 8th level because we do see that giant ring of fire. Oh, that's right, it's ring of fire. And chain lightning at about the same level because holy crap. And we'll cover our gambit with innate spellcasting, so he doesn't have to use any components. Finally, we need to give his claws the old stabby stab. We're gonna go back to the Kuthric Hive Lord. Nothing to write home about, but if we boost this stab attack to 3d10 as opposed to its 1d10, and give it multi-attack where it can cast spells and also do its hands, I think we have a pretty close connection to Megalon. Alright, truth time. I hear giant bug and robot, and I can't help but think of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Imagine a scenario where Apprentice Wizard accidentally makes the biggest bug ever, and it becomes everyone's problem. There could be this fun idea of like a master control unit mouthpiece like we see Goro using to shout directions into a robot. As the DM, it's important to introduce new ways to screw with your players. Have like a time limit, and if they don't say something or decide on a move, the Jet Jaguar analog gets bopped in the head. You could also give Jet some big honking weapons like we see him use in Singular Point, which is gonna be awesome! Much like everything D&D and pretty much this entire series I've wanted to always say, or have always said, this is entirely up to DM interpretation. Kind of think of these videos as just kind of like free ideas to do with as you see fit. Wow, would you look at the time? I clearly had a lot to say. Thank you all so much for joining me this week. Do you plan on making Megalon? Have you ever rolled up a character based on your own beloved franchise? Tell me about it in the comments, I really want to know. And while you're there, do me a favor, hit the sub button, the thumbs up, the bell. I do take notice, and frankly, it's always good to see. Next week, we start our march towards the end of the Showa films. And you know we can't talk about Godzilla without talking about his mechanical, maniacal, M-word for doppelganger. It's Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Thank you all so much for joining me here, and be sure to take care of yourselves out there.
Oh, pardon me, sir. Do you have the time?
It's time to punch in.
Go!